What I want to talk to you about is building the fundamentals for inbound marketing campaigns, specifically SEO. There's a little bit of social and content development in here as well. The last time I was in Berkeley on this campus was back in 1998, so nearly 15 years ago. And I came down with ISEC. I was a member of ISEC in the Portland chapter. And we all jumped on this white van and we came down here for the regional meeting. And a few months later, 6 months later or so, I was in Bangalore, India, and went over there to work for a web technology company. And it was really just an amazing experience for me. And so today, I'm not only here because I share your passion to drive search traffic to your website, but I share your passion for travel and sending young people abroad. It was really an experience that changed my life. There I am in Bangalore with my colleagues. So I worked at a web technology company called Netcraft. And Netcraft, this was back in I got there in April of 1999. So it was pretty early on in terms of what was going on with the internet. And they were a front-end development company, building web pages for offshore companies. And this is where I was first exposed to SEO. Now, SEO was much, much different back then. In a lot of aspects, it was much simpler. Many times we would just pay to be listed in a directory. And you know, the common tactic for SEO was keyword stuffing, finding the right keyword and just slamming it in the title tags, slamming it in the body content, and then you're probably going to rank, especially if you pay for it. But then something magical happened. Google in this area came around, and they realized the power of the link and the information in that link, and they used that to rank web pages, and it completely changed the industry. It completely changed search, and in a lot of ways, SEO became more about being a magician and having a big bag of tricks. But you know, I'm not here to talk to you about that today. I'm not going to show you anything magical. I'm going to show you some practical tips on how to build a strong inbound campaign. To me, this is magical. The fact that Google can have a self-driving car. Inbound marketing is not magical. So I'm sure a lot of you have some experience in SEO, maybe some more than others. And so what I wanted to do today was really cover a broad base of inbound marketing and SEO tactics. So it's really more of a sprint than a marathon. I'm going to give you a ton of information in a short amount of time. And my goal is that everyone walks away with at least a few things. And that you could actually walk away today and do those things and make a difference for your website. How many of you here have SEO experience? Some SEO experience. Yeah. How many, here's the question, how many are experts at SEO? No one? Okay, I'm not that nervous then. So here are the things that I'm going to cover. We're first going to talk about what inbound marketing is, just definitionally, and how that compares to outbound marketing, and what I've nicely termed here as interruption marketing. Then we're going to talk about why search is so important as an aspect of inbound marketing. And then I'm going to give you 20, as I call them, not so magical tips, yet they're very practical. And then we can have a Q&A back and forth. If we have some extra time, I'd be happy to go through some of your sites. I'm also sitting in this room over here for the remainder of the day doing some workshops. So if you're not signed up and I have a little extra time, you can squeeze in, come by and say hi. So what is inbound marketing? Simply, it's marketing where you're bringing the customer to you by creating really strong, relevant content and subsequent placement of that content in search engines and social media channels. Inbound marketing is most often earned and not bought. And on the other side of that coin is outbound marketing. And that is more about pushing a message to a mass number of customers. And it's often by the means of interruption. its aim is to distract, get your attention, and then pull you in. And many times you're going outside of the natural flow of what the customer or your target customer is trying to do. So inbound marketing is very relevant. It matches what people are actually searching for. And they find you and they can make a connection to that content. In fact, 90% of all clicks on the web go to organic search. So it's obviously a way, it's a method people use to find content that is relevant to them. So interruption marketing or outbound marketing can be very distracting. So a typical click-through rate on banner ads is about 0.16%. So 16 people, or 1.6 people out of 1,000 are actually clicking on those banner ads. A recent study was done that put up some blank banner ads and actually got about the same click-through rate. So inbound marketing can be more inspiring. You write content, it gets tweeted, you tweet content, and you drive meaningful and passionate recommendations. And in this case, this ties to an article that his friend wrote about body shame, and he's very interested in it because he's about to have a daughter. And this came up in my Twitter stream, and it's something that I'm much more likely to click on, obviously, than a banner ad. So many times, interruption marketing is completely irrelevant. So knowing that Wendy is expanding the availability of Dr. Pepper in its US restaurants doesn't really matter to me or anyone. And how many of the 12,000 or more press releases per month on PR Newswire really matter to any of us? It's just more noise in the system. Inbound marketing is earned. So if you have a great product or a great service, you may get someone like Adam Richmond from the Food Network talking about you to his 100,000+ followers on Twitter. Now this can make your business overnight. It can generate momentum, and the nice thing is it pays dividends over and over and over again. Now you don't have to get someone from the Food Network necessarily doing this. You can get a lot of little people doing this, and it can add up the same way. So many times it's ironic as well. In this particular article about interruption marketing, I got a pop-up ad, which is nice. So back in the 70s, we were hit with about 500 ads per day. Today it's 10 times that, 5,000. So there's just a lot of noise. And customers keep telling us that they prefer organic results. So of the search engine results page that have ads, and I mean, you can clearly see where Google wants you to click. This is where they make money. They make 98% of their revenue off of these ads. But still, they only get 25% of the click. Because customers know it's not relevant and it's not fitting what they're actually searching for. 75% of the clicks go to that organic area. And only 50% of all search pages even have ads. So there's, in this example, best work exchange programs for college kids. There's no ads on this because Google doesn't really know how to segment and target that based on what people are watching for in AdWords. So how many here run paid ads, PPC? Great. So definitely keep doing that. I'm not saying you should shut it down and go all inbound. There's a reason that people pay a lot of money for paid ads, and there's a reason people do it. It's because it works, especially when you're driving a transaction, you're driving a conversion. It really works. So here's some of the advantages and disadvantages of paid versus inbound. So the nice thing about Outbound marketing is it's static. Costs are static with scale. So you're going to continue to pay 50 cents per click from 1 click to 100,000 clicks. With inbound, there's a lot of upfront costs. And it's not just the cost of an employee. It's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears on your part. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of thought and effort in measurement. And a lot of times it seems like it's not paying its dividends because it takes so long. Outbound is instant. I can go right now and buy an ad on Google and have it up in 5 minutes and start getting results. Inbound is delayed. You're not getting those results for a while, unless you already have really strong domain authority, really strong authority on your page. You spin up a piece of content and you're targeting a specific keyword for that content, you're most likely not going to drive instant results from it. The one big advantage that inbound does have over outbound marketing is that it's more sustainable and it pays dividends and it keeps paying back. So as you build that strength and that momentum, there's this kind of flywheel effect and it just keeps getting stronger and stronger. So if you run a transactional business, if you're looking to send people overseas, you're looking to get an email address from those people, or you're looking to actually get them signed up for a program, paid ads could make sense. But today, hopefully what I show you will convince you that you need to invest some time in SEO and inbound as well. It's not magic. So, why is search such an important component of inbound marketing? Let's dive in. Can anyone tell me how many searches are performed globally per month on Google? Anyone have a guess?
No, it's more than 1 billion, right? It's probably
So I'm hearing 5 billion, 500 billion.
no, 85 billion.
So I'll give you and you actually, some of you are kind of close. If you took the population
per
of
month,
14 Earths, that's how many searches per month we have. And this was back in 2012.
85.
It's 100 billion per month.
That's close.
Every person on Earth, 14 searches per month. It's kind of a staggering number. It's so big it almost doesn't mean anything.
100 million trillion dollars.
So 3 billion searches a day. And 15% of those 3 billion, so 500 million, have never once ever been searched on before. So they're unique, brand new search terms. And for us in the room who don't necessarily run a website that has millions of visitors a month and has domain authority to drive those really, really big, fat, juicy keywords, this is good news because there's still a lot of opportunity. So it's not just about this 18% and trying to drive traffic for the terms that have thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of searches. It's more about that 70% for the long tail. A little of a lot of keywords adds up to a lot of traffic. So don't sweat the big stuff. My experience with this, my personal experience is for 5 years I ran the website for a poker magazine in Las Vegas called Card Player. And this was back in 2004, 2005, and I was reviewing our weblogs and looking, because we didn't have Google Analytics back then, and I was looking at the keyword traffic that we were getting. And we had a pretty strong domain for poker at the time, and so we did have some really big keywords, like we had poker tournaments, poker players, and we were getting a lot of search traffic from that. But as I scrolled down and went deeper and deeper into our log file, I saw that we were getting a little bit of traffic for random poker players, like this guy, Jeffrey Lissandro. He's a great 7-card stud player. And I think at the month I looked, he had like 120 visits. It's like, okay, 120, that's quite a bit for some guy not many people have actually heard of. And so I took that data and I built out a campaign to build these pages, player pages. The great thing about poker is anyone can play. And so you have tens of thousands of people every year registering for big poker tournaments. That card player then got the results. So we have this huge database of poker player stats. We wrote articles about poker players, we took photos of them. So we had an opportunity to aggregate this data and spin it into player pages. In less than a year, we nearly doubled our non-branded search traffic by doing this. So the long tail can be really, really powerful if you understand where you fit into that long tail. It's not magic. That's a real picture, by the way. It seems magic to me that something like that can fly, but I'm not a scientist or engineer. So now we're going to get into the meat of the presentation and talk about 20 tactics that you can use, hopefully today, and walk out of here and start making some really strong SEO improvements. So first I want to talk about the SEO plan. Like all other forms of marketing, it's very important to have a plan. You gotta know what objectives you're trying to hit, so you can go back and measure, see if you're successful or not. The three components of the SEO plan that I've outlined are audience, content, and technology. I would say audience is the most important thing. I mean, maybe this is stating the obvious, but you first need to understand who you're talking to and where they are and how to reach them. And from that, you develop a content plan. And I would say 90% of your effort should go into audience development and content generation. And 10% should go into the actual technology, the back end of SEO. And once you do it, you're pretty much good to go, especially if you don't have a very super dynamic, complicated site. You don't have to continue to do this work over again. So Matt Cutts, who is somewhat feared in our industry at SEO, he is the head of search spam at Google. And he's pretty much the one who is responsible for ensuring high quality results in Google search. So pretty important job. And SEOs hang on every single word that this guy says. So when he came out and said that if you use WordPress, you're 80 to 90% there from the mechanics perspective of SEO, people listen. So if you're not on WordPress now, that's fine. But if you're making a decision about a content management system and using a platform, I would use WordPress. I listen to Matt Cutts. So these are fine too. There's nothing wrong with Drupal, Joomla, Squarespace. Still, I'd use WordPress because they have a much larger community and support. They have open source tools, a ton of plugins. These take more work. They're not open source, etc. If you use some elbow grease, you can use stuff like Typepad to optimize or to build a strong foundation, but it takes a lot more work. Tip number 3, or is it 2? Number 3. Use plugins where available. WordPress has a ton of SEO plugins. Drupal does as well. But the one I use is Yoast. It pretty much covers everything that you need from a very basic SEO standpoint. So being able to edit title tags, meta description, it will even give you some inline suggestions of what to use based on the content that you've created. And it's free, so why not use it? Tip number 4. I want to talk a little bit about on-page SEO and on-page optimization. So what is on-page SEO? It's basically just optimization of the elements that live on your page. And the really good news about on-page SEO is that you or your webmaster has complete control of these elements. This isn't like, links where Google is, where someone else is in control. You have to go and ask people for links. You control all this. So they don't carry as much weight with ranking as external signals like ranks because they're so easy to manipulate, and this is where we got into the problem of keyword stuffing, etc. But they're important for a couple reasons. first, this is what Google uses to match the relevance of your page with what searchers are actually searching for. So trying to topically kind of understand what your page is about, they're looking at all these variables. They're also looking at people linking to the text in those links, but they're looking at the page as well. So making sure that you have your keywords right, and you're using the keywords that people are actually searching for is important. Number two is it improves click-through rate. So these are the elements that actually, which I'll show you in a minute, which actually show up on the search results page. So you have some control of the Google search result page using these elements. And then number three, it provides context around non-text type of content. So videos and images using captions and the like. Today, primarily what I'm going to focus on is the title and the headline and also meta description. If you're really going to make sure you dialed in one of these, or two of them, it would be the title and the headline. Making sure that you have your keywords in there and making sure that you're using so here's the difference between some of these tags. This is the title tag, and you can see why it's so important. It's actually what Google is using as the blue link. So if someone's searching and it doesn't match their intent, they're less likely to click it. And it's also highlighting the keywords in your title tag that are also in the search. Now the difference between the title tag and the H1 tag or the headline tag from a search display standpoint is that the H1 is what shows up in Google News. So when Google search comes up and you see the news, what we call a news one box, you're going to see the H1 in here. You're not going to see the title. So it's very important. And if you have a blog and you write content that is newsworthy, I recommend that you submit it to Google News and try to get in Google News. And then number three is the meta description. So this is actual description. This is in your code in the tag called description, and it comes up under the search result. Now Google doesn't really use this for keyword relevancy anymore as much as they used to. However, it does help with the click-through rate. And this is another area where you want to match searchers' intent with how you describe your content. This is what it looks like in the code. Now it's probably fairly small for some of you back there. But it's really simple. I mean, it's just an HTML tag called title for the meta title. The description is the meta name description, and then your H1 tag. Now this specifically is from this page, IES, and they have a blog called Inside Student Blog. And using the Moz toolbar, which is free, I recommend that you guys download it. It's a little toolbar extension. You can actually quickly pull up everything without going in the code. In this case, I went in the code and grabbed the H1 title. Can anyone tell me what is wrong with this H1 title?
It's a hyperlink.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with anything. So, as you can see, they're using the title of the section, the blog section, as their H1. So why does that matter? For a couple of reasons. Now, obviously, I just made this up. This isn't a real search result. But if it were, there's two different problems. First, it's very unlikely that you're going to rank because Google's looking in that headline, making sure that it actually matches what the users are searching for. They don't want to provide the users with a bad experience and low quality results. So unlikely you'll rank. And then number two, if you do rank, it doesn't match at all with what someone's searching for, and it greatly diminishes the likelihood that someone's going to click through. So in this case, I'm not saying that this would be the best keyword combination, but they should have definitely put the H1 on the title of the blog, which is Buenos Aires street art. All right, tips 5 through 9. It's all about data. You got to be honest with yourself. You have to make data-informed decisions. So the good news about data is that there's a lot of free tools out there that you can use. However, the challenge with making data-informed decisions is that it takes a lot of work. You have to have the discipline to go and look for the right things and to educate yourself on how to segment the data. So I'm going to take you through a few different tools. The first two are critical, or must-haves. Many of you probably already have them. Number one is Google Webmaster Tools. Now, this is the only way that you're ever going to get information on what Google thinks of your site. So when they're sending out the spiders and crawling trillions of pages of the web, they're collecting all this information. And the majority of it you'll never know. You'll never know why they're ranking something. But at least here, they're going to tell you if they find issues, if their crawler has run into some issues. In this example, these are server errors. So Google really doesn't like it when they crawl a page and the page doesn't exist, which we call a 404 error. If you think about on the scale that Google's crawling the web, the more junk they have to crawl and try to figure out, the more it costs them. So if you're serving them a lot of 404 errors, and this actually isn't that bad, there's about 5,000. I've worked with a site in the past that has millions of 404 just because of bad technical infrastructure. Google's going to dial down that crawl rate in what we call a crawl budget and not crawl your site as much. So this is the first place you want to go to see what is Google doing on your site and what do they think of it. How often do they crawl it? How many pages? How deep are they going into it? And then there's other helpful things like search queries. They'll tell you which queries are actually being used to get to your site. Number 2, critical must-have, web analytics. In this case, Google Analytics. I mean, it's kind of the de facto standard in the industry is to use Google Analytics because it's free. They spend a lot of money on it, and it's very rich data. But as I said before, it's only as powerful as you make it. So you have to take the time to learn how to use it, and the good news is that they have free educational material. It's called Google Analytics Academy, and you can go there and take free courses. You can even get certified. Not as critical, but a nice to have would be something like FeedBurner. Setting up an RSS feed that your users can subscribe to, and then this is just going to allow you to track those subscribers and the number of clicks to your articles via the RSS feeds. Also, not critical, but nice to have, is URL shortener service like Bitly, where you can share stuff on social media and see who's clicking on it, who's sharing it, etc. And definitely optional and not free is Moz. Now, the difference between what we do at Moz and like what Google Analytics does, or the information that Webmaster Tools provides you. Webmaster Tools and Google Analytics is really about what's happening on your site. So Google Analytics specifically is looking at your referral data to your site and allowing you to parse that so you can understand the data. What we do is we try to understand all those signals outside of your site. So we try to provide information on who's linking to you, who's talking about you on social media, how you're ranking, so some competitive intelligence with certain keywords of how you're ranking. So again, it's not free, but if you're doing a larger scale type of SEO campaign, it can be handy. Yeah, the brain is pretty magical. I don't kind of blows my mind. I don't understand how that works, but don't stare at it for too long. All right, I want to talk a little bit about keyword research. This has to do with finding the right audience, and as I said, is probably the number one most important thing for you to do when you're creating a piece of content. You want to make sure that piece of content has an audience. You have a plan around that piece of content. Now, if you're a huge publisher, you can spend hours doing keyword research. I mean, this is basically the Huffington Post model. They look at Google Trends and they see what's trending in search, and they do research, and they just dial in those topics and those keywords. They build links and they drive a ton of traffic. That takes a lot of work. You don't have that much time. So if you have a little bit of time, 5 minutes, I highly recommend just doing a little bit of keyword research when you're creating your content. And Will Reynolds, a great search marketer, he coined the phrase, "Don't hit enter." And that's basically just a catchy phrase to remember. You can use Google as a research tool. So Google has something called auto-suggest. And you just start typing in a word and it'll tell you, it stack ranks which phrases are most popular. So if you're trying to decide, if you're writing about gap year programs, you want to know which keywords and which topics are searched upon the most in Google. Put in gap year and don't hit enter, and they're going to give you a list. So in this case, gap year programs is number 1, gap year abroad is number 2. So that's powerful free information, but don't stop there. They tell you to hit enter, but just don't hit enter. Pick the first one, gap year programs. Now you get all this other information. So what are people searching for in regards to gap year programs? Well, they're looking for gap year programs in the US, abroad, after college, after high school. Really good, powerful information. Just keep going. See what comes in next. And of course, people want free gap year programs. Now this one is pretty handy, and not a lot of people use it because it's not super intuitive. So instead of not hitting enter, actually bring your cursor back to the beginning and put in a preceding space. And now it's going to give you all the modifiers to that search phrase. So in this case, you have gap year programs, put a space, you can see that people are looking for best gap year programs, Christian gap year programs, paid gap year programs. Again, powerful stuff. So go back to journalism school and the who, what, where, why, when, and how. And do the same thing. Instead of just putting a preceding space, make it a question. A lot of times people are asking questions in the search engine, right? So you can see what types of questions that they're asking. A lot of it has to do with costs. How much does a gap year program cost? I love this tool. This is Sumo. And basically what this does is it takes all of the auto-suggest functionality from many search engines, not just Google, but from Bing, from Yahoo, from Amazon, from Netflix. So you can see what people are searching for most often in those search engines. So let's dig a little deeper here and have a real-world example. This is the ISA's website, and they have a whole section on gap programs. Now, if you use the Moz toolbar, the browser extension, it'll pull up a little box that looks like this, so you don't have to go into the code. You can see it gives you the URL, page title, meta description, keywords, and H1. So in this case, let's focus on the page title. So since this page is really about gap programs, the first recommendation I would make here is to take out the term study abroad and just really hone in on gap year programs. And then if I'm creating this page, I'm going to dig deeper and see if gap year programs is really the right term to use. So this is Google Trends, another free tool. So you can find it, there's a link here, and I'm going to provide this deck to everyone. There's a lot of links in here. But what's great about this is Google's not going to give you the exact search volume, but they're going to give you approximate popularity of search terms. So if you're trying to decide between one search term over another that are pretty similar, like gap program versus gap travel, you can compare them. And here you can see that gap travel historically has been much more popular, but it's converged here in the last year, and they're pretty similar now. Okay, so it's one more data point. We can dig a little deeper. So this is Moz's keyword difficulty tool. which is basically you can put in a keyword and get a better understanding of how competitive that keyword is. So it's going to give you information on volume. It gives you the Bing volume here. And then it analyzes all the results and looks at all the links to those results to understand how hard it's going to be to rank. So if we dig a little deeper here, we can see that gap year programs is actually, it has a higher volume than gap year travel, but a lower difficulty score. So if I was going to recommend, I'd say, take out the first term in the page title of study abroad, and it looks like they picked the right keyword in terms of gap year programs. So there's nothing more frustrating than being outranked by someone who stole your content. It sucks, but it happens a lot. Plagiarism is a big problem. And the thing hiding under the surface with the plagiarism is that there's another very bad element of it, and that's duplicate content. Again, Google doesn't like going out and wasting a lot of their resources crawling the web for something that is just duplicated everywhere. So if you have a piece of content that you write and it's been replicated, that's actually going to hurt. It's going to dilute the value of that content, and it's going to dilute your ranking value. So one quick way to check to see if you're getting ripped off is put a sentence or two in quotes directly from your blog and see what shows up. If anything shows up other than your blog, you could be getting ripped off. There are, I guess the caveat to that is there's a lot of these sites that scrape and just provide the first paragraph and then a link to your site. But, maybe grab a sentence that's further down, that's out of the first paragraph. And then there's tools like Copyscape, and this is a free tool where you can put in the URL of your piece of content, so like of a blog, and it'll tell you if it exists elsewhere on the web. Number 12. I really love this one. This is, I guess, getting a little towards the trick side of things, but it works well. So we have a tool called Follow Along at Laws, and there's a free version, so feel free to use that. It's also part of our paid version. But what it does is really simple, but also really helpful. So basically, you can search everyone's Twitter bio for keywords. And the reason we do this is we want to build a network of influencers that hopefully can amplify our message or amplify a piece of content. So in this case, what I wanted to see was who out there on Twitter is very influential as a self-proclaimed travel blogger. So in quotes, I'm searching for travel blogger, and I can see the top 5 here have quite a few followers. So they could be interesting targets for me. So let's look a little closer at Stacy. Now, when we go to her page, we can see that she's already promoting other stuff. So she's promoting a downtown Disney district, 100 Days of Frugal. So she's talking about other people's content. So that's a good sign. She's also a blogger, so she's creating content. She's also a mom. She has kids. So, gap year programs and the like could be something that eventually is pretty interesting to her, and something she may be interested in covering. And she has a lot of followers. So there's several ways you can connect with people like this. Of course, if you just reach out to them and ask them to retweet a link, that's probably not going to work. Something that we've done in the publishing space for a long time is that we call it ego bait, where basically you ask people, you either interview people and you create a whole story on them, or you quote them in a story. And then once you're done, you tweet at them, you mention them in your tweet, you mention that they're quoted, in hopes that they're going to retweet it. So that can be very effective. Tip number 13. Time it right if you're on Twitter. And this is another functionality of Follow Along. This is, you can basically put in your handle for Twitter, and it'll analyze all of your followers and tell you when they're tweeting, and when they're active online. So in my case, most people are active in the evening. So I wouldn't want to be tweeting in the hours where you see not a lot of activity, which happens to be when I'm mostly tweeting. So if you combine that with the tool called Buffer, this allows you to schedule your tweets, and it's really awesome. So you can, if you have something really great to say, you can make sure you're saying it at the right time. This isn't really magic, but it's more Darwinism. Not provided.
Oh, that keyboard. Oh, God.
So how many people are familiar with this? Not provided and okay. So in 2011, Google announced that they're going to stop sending keyword data that people are searching for into Google Analytics or other web analytics programs for those who are logged into Google. So at the time, it was called secured search. And it didn't seem like that big of a deal initially because we hit, about 10% of our search visits didn't have keywords related to it. In Google Analytics, you just see this when you try to drill down into keywords. You just see this term not provided. You're like, okay, it's kind of frustrating, but the law of averages, I can just look at my other data and still get some good stuff out of it. But then, 2013, at the end of 2013, Google announced no more keyword data. And so they're gradually getting up to 100% not provided. So that means we're making decisions in the dark. So going back to my card player example, the way I was able to make that strategic decision was I looked at our past data, I looked at our keyword data, and I saw something in there. And I was able to exploit an opportunity around player names. I can't do that anymore. It's not possible. We have to get our data from somewhere else. And unfortunately, there's not many places to get it. But the one place that you can get some data is Google Webmaster Tools. So there's a tab called Search Queries. And we can categorize it as better than nothing. It does have its problems in that they decide what keyword data they want to give you. It's limited to 15,000 keywords, so which isn't a huge deal unless you're a pretty big site. And you can't track conversions to it. It's not integrated well with Google Analytics. But again, it's better than nothing. Tip number 15, rich snippets. So rich snippets is just data that Google puts around search results, kind of extra data that they provide their users with more information. This comes from your page. You just have to tell Google where it is and what your page is about. And the reason you want rich snippets in your search results is because you own more real estate. You end up taking up more room. You have more blue links for people to click on. And it amplifies your click-through rate. Here's a more relevant example. So you probably can't see the search term. It's pretty small. It's travel fair, 2014. And this company here, this domain, has implemented a structure within their code to tell Google that they have events. And Google's serving those events directly in the search results. Here's the data that you can mark up on your website. Articles, events, local information. So if you actually have a storefront where you're sending people in, you can mark it up with your name, your address, your phone number, restaurants, products, software applications, movies, and TV episodes. These are probably the ones we care about. How many people have a local storefront? Anyone here? Okay. So for those of you that do, local businesses markup would be good. And in the notes of this presentation, I have a link to more information about getting started with putting this data in your website, but I'm going to take you through a quick little screencast here of how to do it. So it might be hard to read, I apologize, but this is for the First Abroad website, which I believe is here somewhere. Anyway, what you can do is you go in there and you put your URL, and it's going to find that page for you. You can actually, right there on the page, highlight the information. This is specifically around an event. So you highlight that information, and you tell Google the name of the event. And then you go in and you can highlight the actual location. And it's very user-friendly. You just have to basically click on the different attributes, and you build it out. Now, this isn't going to automatically update it for Google, but what they are going to do is they're going to, which you'll see in a second, is they're going to spit out the HTML code for you. So basically, all you have to do is copy and paste it into that page. So this isn't a very scalable solution. If you have many events pages that are dynamically generated, you wouldn't want to do this. You would probably want to build that in dynamically to your site. But if you only have one events page or two events pages, you can very easily do this, and it provides you a lot of extra value. So once you've done all this, you just click on Create HTML up at the top, and there you go. You can just copy and paste that, and replace the HTML you already have for the page, and you're going to start seeing those rich snippets come up in search. Nope. Of course, the Microsoft product crashes. I am on Mac. All right. So, I was going to ask the question here of who's the second biggest search engine. I think you probably all just saw it up on there, so I'm not going to ask it. Anyway, YouTube is the second biggest search engine. It's very important. While Google is doing 100 billion searches per month, YouTube is doing 60 billion searches per month. And just to put it in context, Yahoo does about 14 billion per month. So in 600,000 years, we've come a long way, from Neanderthal to creating iPhones. 600,000 years is the amount of video consumed in 1 month. 6 billion hours. 1 hour for every person on Earth. So having a YouTube channel is a great way to increase your reach. It's also a great way to claim more Google search real estate, since they're starting to display a lot of videos in the search engine results. It also helps you with your brand. So tip number 17, I'm not a video expert, but this guy is. Phil Nottingham. You should follow him on Twitter. He's with Distilled SEO. Super sharp guy. So it's at Phil Nottingham. So back in the day of Google, it was all about blue links, 10 blue links, and click-through rates of those 10 blue links looked something like that. After the first 3, you dropped off significantly. But things have changed quite a bit. There's a lot more verticals. There's 25 different, more than 25 verticals on Google. So there's a knowledge graph carousel, local knowledge graph carousel. You see songs in the search result. You see news. You see other knowledge graph results. You see videos. You see music, all sorts of things. So I want to talk about one of them specifically, and that's authorship. And that's all it is. Picture. It's a headshot. But it increases click-through rate by up to 30%. Now, why is that so important? Well, it means you don't necessarily have to have the #1 spot anymore to get a lot of the clicks. People like seeing faces. It builds trust. Plus, an added advantage is it links to that author's, all of that author's articles online. And it also links to his or her circles on Google+. This can be classified as a bad slide, but very informative once you download this slide deck. It just gives you the instructions on how to install authorship. It's really, really easy. You basically just need a Google Plus account, and you need to have your Google Plus account needs to have your email address. It needs to be the same as the domain that you're creating content for. And then you just make that connection, you start getting authorship. Tip number 19, read up. The great thing about SEO and inbound marketing is that we happen to be inbound marketers ourselves. So we create a lot of great content. And most of it's free. I'm not sure how many of you come to the Moz blog, but we have a ton of free content. So we have the Beginner's Guide to SEO. That's one of my favorites. It has the link in here. Make sure to read that. And then this is really cool. And it's kind of hidden on our site, but I provided the link. This is the HTML cheat sheet. So it's the web developer's cheat sheet. So it's going to give you information about what the HTTP status codes mean, some definitional things around on-page HTML elements. So it's really good. It's basic stuff, but foundational. And finally, what I'm going to finish with is one of maybe a little more inspiration and sticking with it. So Rand Fishkin, he's the founder of Moz, and he's been traveling for years around the world, talking about SEO and educating people on SEO. And his wife, Geraldine, comes with him. And so she decided to start a travel blog. And when she initially started, it was really slow going. Not many visitors to her site whatsoever. But she stuck with it. But most people give up. But she just stuck with it. And she got a few mentions on some big publications. And it just took off. And it's continued to take off and sustain that level of thousands of visitors per day. Anyway, thanks a lot for having me here, and I hope this was useful for you.